Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to Friday Night Filmstrips. And for tonight's film suggestion, we're going to be taking a look at a movie suggested to me by my friend Kiki as we take a look at Bartok the Magnificent. So, what is my history with this movie? Well, before we get into the history of this movie, we need to get into the history of its predecessor, namely Anastasia. Now, I've only seen Anastasia once in my life, and that was when I was a kid, and I was watching Cartoon Network on our cable downstairs. And for the life of me, I can barely remember anything about the movie. It involved a princess. The bad guy was Rasputin. Apparently, it's a very heavy fictionalized version of the tragedy of the Russian royal family, and likewise, the character of Bartok in that movie was Rasputin, as Rasputin's comedic sidekick. Also, that movie was the source of the song In the Dark of the Night, which is a kick-ass villain song that I highly recommend that you hear, because god damn, it's awesome. Hell, look up the Jonathan Young cover of that song. It kicks ass. But that's neither here nor there. Let's get back to this. My point, whatever. In the case of Anastasia, my history with that film is limited. All I know is that it was a Don Bluth movie, and apparently it wasn't very well received. However, I think, and again, this is just based on what I can remember, so take what I say with a grain of salt here, but basically, Don Bluth and his creative team wanted to essentially make a spin-off movie starring Bartok, and since this wasn't a studio-mandated thing, they just essentially decided to, they just let Don Bluth do whatever he wanted here, and so Don Bluth was able to essentially kind of work his magic, so to speak, and actually make a proper spin-off to Anastasia starring Bartok. And hell, and the thing is, apparently the film was so well received by some people behind the scenes that when the film came out, someone did suggest possibly releasing this film in theaters. Well, the thing is, Don Bluth didn't want it to be released in theaters. When the movie was being made, they were going into it under the impression it was just going to be a straight-to-video thing. You know, just come out on DVD and VHS, and from there, that would be it. And I'll admit, production-wise, you can kind of see that mindset in how the film is presented. And, well, while I don't think this film would have been despised if it came out in theaters, I don't think it would have drawn in the crowd that whoever's made the suggestion to put it in theaters thinks it would have. As a result, the film was eventually released to home media, and it has gained a proper positive reputation. Mostly because, unlike a lot of the films that Don Bluth made in the 90s, this one was mostly hands-off from the studio. Like I said, Don Bluth and his team were allowed to kind of do their own thing here, and so they're actually able to put some heart into the production and actually try and make a good movie. However, I myself did not seem very interested. As I said, when it came to Anastasia, I barely remember anything about the movie, and again, the film didn't really interest me. So when I heard that there was a movie that starred the sidekick to the main bad guy from Anastasia, again, I didn't really see myself wanting to see it. I just kind of, I heard about it. It didn't look awful, but it also looked like a film that wouldn't appeal to me. The closest I ever came to watching the movie was a review of it, and while the review was positive, and again, the reception I've heard towards the movie was also positive, I never really sought the film out. I wasn't against seeing it at that point, mind you. It's just nothing ever compelled me to want to see it. Well, that is until I wanted to do these vlogs, which also brings me kind of to what I was to last week when I talked about Bugsy Malone. As I mentioned last week, part of the reason why I got Bugsy Malone suggested to me was because I was on a Discord call with my friend Art, and likewise they suggested Bugsy Malone, and after I, like I said, kind of coaxed them into suggesting it for these vlogs, the subject was brought up about, well, the films being made for these vlogs, and my friend Kiki, who was also in that call, decided to throw her 2 cents in and suggested to me this movie, as apparently she really does like the movie and wanted me to give my thoughts on it. So here we are. I finally got an excuse to watch it in full and finally form my own opinion of it. And do I see in this movie what my friend Kiki saw in it? Well, let's take a look at it and find out. As today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be taking a look at Bartok the Magnificent. And Kiki, if you're watching this video, I hope you enjoy. So, with all that said, let's get to the plot summary. So, for a film called, well, Bartok the Magnificent, the main character is, of course, Bartok. Only he's not the sidekick to some big bad this time around. It would be kind of a sour movie if that was the case. No, in this case, he's actually a traveling performer, and his main gimmick is that he's, well, Bartok the Magnificent. How his performances typically go is that he goes from town to town in Russia and just sings about all of these great heroic exploits that he did, like fighting monsters, harpies, dragons, and how he effortlessly took them down with little to no effort and is regarded as a great hero. It's all crap, by the way. Yeah, none of the stories are real. He's lying to hell and back and embellishing or just telling straight up tall tales. And ultimately, he's just doing it to get the crowd riled up and want to root for him. Hell, he even has a performing partner by the name of Zosie, who is a bear voiced by Kelsey Grammer. And that immediately makes him awesome. And part of Zosie's whole deal is that during the performance, he's supposed to come in, cause a rampage in whatever town they're in, and then Bartok is supposed to fly in, expertly kick his ass, and then throw him in, and then after killing him, throw him into the cart, and then once they leave town, they divide the spoils up. And the movie begins exactly with that, which also brings me to another aspect of this movie. It's a kind of sort of musical. Hell, the movie even begins with two separate songs. The first one is supposed to be a song made by the chorus about this witch called Baba Yaga and how she steals children, which I think is imposing enough to try and set a mood. While the second song is called Bartok the Magnificent, which is sung by Bartok himself, which is again about all of his exploits. And again, it's a nice, catchy and upbeat and boppy song, which again helps establish Bartok's character and how he's both a performer and kind of a shyster with his work. However, during this particular performance, there happens to be one person in the audience that happens to catch a good view of his show and actually finds it entertaining, and that is the royal Tsar of Russia, Prince Ivan, who is very much overjoyed to witness Bartok's performance. And even after he takes care of Zosie, after Bartok takes care of Zosie and all the audience starts giving him gold, immediately Prince Ivan throws him a royal ring, which Bartok is more than happy to take because it's a jeweled ring and it looks shiny, so it's probably worth a lot. However, the ring is apparently a royal family heirloom, and Sir Ivan's, I think, right-hand woman, her name is Ludmilla, who I forgot what, hold on. Oh yeah, she's the advisor. Sorry, I'm looking stuff up online too while I'm doing this. Basically, Ludmilla tells Ivan that was not something that he should have done. After, like I said, that's a royal family heirloom. That shouldn't just be something that's freely given away. But Prince Ivan doesn't really give a shit. After all, he's the prince. He can do whatever the hell he wants. So he's just pretty much just tells her, "Fuck it, I'll do it." And so while Ludmilla does allow him to do it while they're out in public, once they return back to the palace, she continues to chastise him and tell him that he kind of needs to get his shit together and he needs to present a strong front for his people, since after all, he's the prince. He needs to set an example. But Ivan's not for that. Ivan wants to do things his way, and if that means breaking traditions, well, he's more than happy to break them. And if Ludmilla doesn't like it, well, she doesn't get a say in the matter. She's his advisor, but that doesn't mean that she can say what he wants. After all, yeah, he may be a kid, but he's still the prince, and she has to respect the royal family. Which, when Ludmilla hears that, she does begrudgingly comply and back off. However, that night, things start kind of going wrong. As while Prince Ivan is sleeping, someone sneaks into the castle and kidnaps the poor kid. And the next day, Ludmilla is absolutely heartbroken to hear of the news, but she happens to find a clue to who could be Prince Ivan's kidnapper, a black nail supposedly belonging to Baba Yaga, and as a result, she goes out to the people of Russia and tells them the heartbreaking tale about Prince Ivan and how he was kidnapped by the dreaded Baba Yaga, and how they must immediately go and save him, that they need a valiant hero to perform the task. And wouldn't you know it, they know of such a hero. He was in the kingdom the day before. Which is where we cut back to Bartok. As, yeah, after his performance, he and Zosie hit the road, though Zosie though Zoji did kind of have some words about the performance, partially because Bartok was trying to skimp on paying him to the point where he tried favoring himself over Zoji, and on top of that, there's the ring too. As Lamilla, Zoji thinks that Bartok should return the ring because it's a Russian family heirloom, but again, Bartok doesn't want to get rid of it because it's very valuable. However, while the pair of them are on the road, they end up getting stopped by Russian Cossacks who have been sent to retrieve Bartok. And while Bartok doesn't want to go with them, they make a very convincing argument via sword point to get Bartok to come back with them to the palace. And sure enough, upon arriving, Ludmilla just gives Bartok the whole spiel. Prince Ivan's been kidnapped, but Baba Yaga did it. We want you to go and save her. Of course, Bartok does not want to take this mission. After all, his whole story, all the stories he does are just there to, hype himself up. None of it's real. He's not a real hero. And as a result, he tries making excuses not to go, saying he's got a tight schedule. And there are other places he's got to be, other monsters he's got to fight. But little by little, he is worn down by other arguments. Like Ludmilla tries bribing him with a bunch of gold and riches. And while Bartok almost breaks because of that, what ultimately puts the nail in the coffin for him is when a little girl comes up to him and asks him why he can't help, and ultimately Bartok just can't resist that little girl's face, because you'd have to have a heart of steel to resist that face, and he says, fine, I'll go and rescue him. And so off Bartok goes, and once they leave the city, Zoji, who was hiding within Bartok's cart, comes out, and while at first Bartok thinks that Zoji is going to read him the riot act because he accepted a very dangerous mission that could get them killed, well, Zoji, surprisingly, says that he's all for this, even though when Bartok accepted the mission, he was silently damning the bat, but whatever. And basically, Zoji admits that maybe this could be a golden opportunity for Bartok, which also leads to the next song in the movie, which is called, it's called A Possible Hero, and it's sung by Zoji and Bartok, and it's basically just Zoji trying to tell Bartok how this is his chance to be a real hero, how he can actually become the very thing that he keeps hyping himself up to be. And while Bartok is a little hesitant to accept that, eventually the song does its job and hypes him up enough so that he's willing to go and face Baba Yaga in her forest. Though upon the pair arriving at her forest, they're a little intimidated because it's dark, gloomy, and just depressing. And not helped by the fact that once they get kind of the center of the forest, they happen across Baba Yaga's, well, I'm going to say gate guardian, which in this case is a giant skull with horns on the side, voiced by Tim Curry. And we want to know what helps make him intimidating besides the fact that he's voiced by Tim Curry. He's the only thing in this movie that is CGI. Like, the rest of the film is completely hand-drawn. But this fucking thing, it's entirely CGI. And it is so off-putting, especially with the creepy way the skull looks. It's all just, like, it's got sharp teeth. Like I said, it's got the horns. It's got evil eyes. And the way Tim Curry voices it, it's just the same chilling. It's essentially just the typical Tim Curry that you would expect from him. However, what immediately offsets all that creepiness is his role in this flick. As the gate guardian, so to speak, for Baba Yaga, he has to make sure that nobody can get through, though he does give everyone a chance, as he does ask riddles. Answer a riddle right, then you can go in and he'll give you a key to Baba Yaga's cottage. And, well, the riddles are basically just jokes. Like, for example, the first riddle he gives Bartok and Zoji is basically the build up to the joke is that it sounds like he's getting them ready to do a math problem, only for him to immediately just stop all that and say, well, what kind of key do you need to get into Baba Yaga's hut? Which is, again, the punchline is that you need a skeleton key. And again, throughout all this, even Bartok's like, wait, I thought this was a math problem. But whatever. The answer to the riddle is given by Zoji, and thus Bartok is given a key. Unfortunately, Bartok is the only one allowed in, so Zoji has to wait outside. And while he says he'll be with Bartok in spirit, Zoji just puts his feet up and reads a book. So, from this point on in the movie, he's just kind of there. Yeah. But again, I like him, so I'm willing to give him a pass. Either way, Bartok goes further into Baba Yaga's domain and does manage to find her house, which is of course a cottage, which is of course a decrepit old cottage on a bit of land which walks on chicken legs. And so he manages to get in and and tries looking around for the prince, but he doesn't manage to get very far before Baba Yaga shows up, and we enter a new song, and we get another song sung by her called Someone's in My House, which, in my opinion, is kind of an unnecessary song, doesn't really add anything to the story, but it does act as a good introduction of Baba Yaga, as we see how energetic and kind of fun of a character she is, as she keeps going about the house, knowing that someone is in there, but can't find them. However, as she keeps going along, everything in her house seems to come to life, and basically just turns against Bartok, surrounding him, scrubbing him off, throwing him all over the place, until he eventually lands in Baba Yaga's hands, and she locks him in a cage. So, yeah, he's kind of stuck. Either way, though, he does demand Baba Yaga tell him where Prince Ivan is, and Baba Yaga says that she will tell Bartok, but in return, she needs him to get her 3 things. He does that, then he can get the prince. He fails, he dies. So Bartok kind of reluctantly agrees to this task, and so immediately Baba Yaga sends Bartok off to retrieve the first of these things, which in this case is a pink snake by the name of Pilaf. Though before Bartok goes off to save her, Baba Yaga tells Bartok that he has to do this by himself, that he can't get any help from Zoji, or else again, they'll die. So Bartok realizes he's kind of in this for the long haul. Either way, he does end up leaving and does meet back up with Zoji outside of the Tim Curry skull, and they do go to the north of Baba Yaga's forest, because, well, Baba Yaga said that's where Pilaf was, and sure enough, the north of the forest is cold, freezing, and very much has a way of nipping your toes, but they do manage to find Pilaf, who is this adorable little bean right here. Seriously. She's fucking adorable. And she only gets like a few minutes of screen time in this movie, but I love her. I immediately love her. She's super friendly, nice, maybe a little kooky, but overall it's just very outgoing, very huggable, always nice, just happy to see everyone. And gosh darn it, she's just so sweet. She's just so cute. I love her. And unfortunately though, she's kind of stuck here. Kind of going back to how this whole place is a frozen wasteland, she is stuck atop of a mountain, and a part of her body is frozen to said mountain. Now, while Pilaf does have some shape-shifting abilities, like she can stretch her body out and even grow kind of sort of arms in order to hug someone, and because this one spot of her body is stuck to the mountain, it doesn't matter how far you stretch her, she'll always come back. So she can't really go anywhere. As such, Bartok tries various ways to rip her off it, even stretching out her body, which he ultimately loses his grip on when Pilaf herself just tickles him with her hair tuft. And so he finally just says, fuck it, if I can't move Pilaf, then I'll just move the mountain. And so he manages to rig together this whole pulley system, which allows him to essentially catapult the top of the mountain right off of it. Unfortunately, though, it's still a big rock, and Bartok's a little bad, so he has to keep reusing this slingshot maneuver to get it more and more into Baba Yaga's house. And when they finally land in front of the Tim's Curry skull again, well, Pilaf just pops right off. So it allows him to go further in after answering another riddle from the Tim Curry skull and drop Pilaf off, where Baba Yaga reunites with her beloved pet before extracting an essence from her, which he puts in a pot before putting Pilaf in her cage. From there, Baba Yaga appoints Bartok with another task, going to this fiery red ogre by the name of Oblay so that he can retrieve his crown, which again has the same standard rules. Basically, he has to do this himself, and while Zoji can come along as moral support, he can't help him. So again, Bartok goes there, and basically he does confront Oblay, who is basically just this dumb orc who basically is a he's basically... Hold on one second. Sorry, I was blanking on the word. Oblay's a blacksmith, and Fire Ogre is a very appropriate term for him because his very being radiates heat. You can even see the flames just kind of dancing around his body, and I'll give credit where it's due. The effects of the fire is actually pretty darn good. As such, Bartok tries talking Oblay down to get his crown, but Oblay ain't having any of that because he's a big dumb brute, and so he starts trying to attack Bartok. However, Bartok's able to use his performing skill to distract Oblate by juggling, and while Oblate is distracted with all the juggling rocks that Bartok is using, Bartok's able to slip it under his crown and manages to get it away, even rolling it out of there before he and Zozie are able to ditch Oblate, who falls into a watery moat surrounding his domain, which because of his heat, he just melts all the water, so there you go. As either way, Bartok managed to get the crown back, and immediately again, Baba Yaga takes something from the crown and drops it in her stew, and she tells Bartok that she has one more task for him, though that can wait till tomorrow, so Bartok can at least rest. But upon the next day, after Baba Yaga wakes him up, the witch tells him that he has to get this floating feather from the sky. And while Bartok at first thinks that that'll be an easy task, after all, he's a bat, he can just fly up there, Baba Yaga tells him that there are new rules here. He can only get this magic feather by using the tools from the previous excursions, i.e. the giant rock and the crown, and he can't fly. So, yeah, this task is going to be a lot harder than it was. And so while Bartok is annoyed by this, again, he does comply, as he and Zozie manage to make their way to where the magic feather is, and sure enough, it's just floating between these two peaks, just out of reach. And so while Bartok tries using the tools he's been given to reach it, he just can't get it, and even at one point, the heat from the crown ends up destroying the rock pillar and causes it to fall apart. As such, immediately Bartok kind of just wants to give up because he gave it the old college try, but he can't do this. But Zozie manages to kind of motivate him by using reverse psychology about how they can just run away and how they can just, how once the heat died down, they can just come back out and do the show again and keep pretending to be the thing that Bartok almost was. So they can just get around this, but this makes Bartok so upset that it finally manages to give him the inspiration to figure out what to do. Because the thing is, while the rock did fall apart, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have to be used in the way it was built. In this case, he could put it back together. Maybe it's not a rock, I don't know. Point is, he's able to take the pieces of the rock and build them back up into a much more structured tower, which turns out to be tall enough, with the help of the crown, to reach the magic feather. And so once Bartok has that, he and Zozie make their way back to Baba Yaga, and of course, she dips the feather in the stew. However, before Baba Yaga can tell Bartok where Prince Ivan is, she says that she needs one thing from Bartok, something from inside. And of course, Bartok's annoyed by this because the initial agreement was he had to do 3 things for her, not this 4th thing. And so he tries handing a bunch of stuff over, including this honestly funny joke about how he got an autographed picture of Ivan the Terrible that he only got because he got him in a good mood. But ultimately, none of what Bartok has is enough, and Bartok finally says, you know what? Screw you. You made me go through all this crap, and then you tell me that there's one more thing I need to get that only I can give you. You know what? Screw you. No wonder no one likes you. You're an ugly old bitch, and everybody thinks you're stupid. Okay, he doesn't use that language, but the meaning is still there. And apparently hearing this does cause Baba Yaga to get heartbroken and start crying. And while Bartok at first is going to once again leave, when he sees Baba Yaga crying, it does manage to get into whatever part of his heart that his emotions are in, and so he managed to go in there, and as she talks about how she knows, she knows she's ugly and that nobody likes her, this does manage to get Bartok to feel something as he apologizes for everything he said, that he didn't mean it, he was just upset, and he starts crying too, which turns out this is exactly what Baba Yaga needed, as she managed to get one of Bartok's tears and then dips it into the stew, because the final thing that she needed from him, it was something from the heart. As such, she mixes it all together and makes what's in the stew into a potion, which she gives to Bartok. However, this potion is not actually essential to find the prince. No, this is more something for Bartok specifically. When it comes down to it, how she can find the prince? It's rather easy, as they instead just go outside of Baba Yaga's home, and her home manages to stand up so tall that they actually manage to look above the clouds, and she points to where Prince Ivan is, and it turns out he never left the city. In fact, he's actually locked up in a tower, and so once Bartok hears that, he realizes, oh, you're actually not the kind of person that everyone thinks you are. You probably never kidnapped any kids. Which, yeah, Baba Yaga confirms. She never kidnapped Prince Ivan. She does not like the thing. But the thing is, she just lets people think all these things about her because she's not a very social person, and she just prefers to live alone. And as such, while she is a bit eccentric, ultimately she means nobody any harm. So she just let. So as a result, she's just content to live in her forest, safe and sound, and if anyone comes by, she just gives them a good scare, and then they're on their way. So again, it's all good. But either way, she gives Bartok the potion, and basically, this potion is essentially meant to be the external reward for all of his efforts. As this potion is supposed to essentially transform whoever drinks it into whatever they are on the inside, but tenfold. So think of it like the super soldier serum from Captain America, except instead of turning him into a Red Skull, it'll turn him into... I don't know. My point is, it makes you stronger and just makes the inside the outside. So as a result, she gives that to Bartok and tells him to use it during the most crucial of times. And so after Bartok tries to get a hug out of her, which he tells him not to push his luck, he goes outside and does manage to meet back up with Zoji so they can go back to the city and tell Ludmilla where it is the prince is. Because, yeah, in the prince's absence, Ludmilla has taken the throne until he can come back. And so, as such, Bartok and Joji go to the outskirts of the city, though Bartok says he's going to go in alone, since after all, everyone is supposed to think that Joji is dead, so Bartok just tells him to stay out, even though Joji says that he'll wear a disguise. But ultimately, Bartok manages to go into the throne room, and Ludmilla's like, "Oh, Bartok, it's lovely to see you. So where's the prince?" And so after Bartok just goes on and on and on, giving an over-exaggerated tall tale version of the story, he does talk about how the potion is supposed to transform you what's on the inside but tenfold and make you stronger and all that, and that the prince never left the city, that he's in the tower, and that if they go there, they'll be able to find him, which actually surprises Ludmilla, but she does give Bartok the benefit of the doubt, as Bartok, and her personal guard go to the tower, though she tells Bartok that the prince is there, she'll have his head. But ultimately, luck seems to shine on Bartok, as once they arrive, there's the prince, alive and well, locked up. So, yeah, Prince is saved. Prince is saved. Baba Yaga didn't kidnap him. He never left the city, so all is good, right? Well, there's the matter of how the prince got there. Because after all, Baba Yaga wasn't the one that kidnapped this kid. So who did? Maybe it's the lady right here that looks like that she's raising her fist against the hero. You know, the one who immediately took power when the prince was gone. Yeah, Ludmilla's the bad guy. And upon them finding the prince, she grabs Bartok and throws him into a little cage. So, yeah. Basically, what's really going on is that Ludmilla wanted to make a grab for the throne, and the Baba Yaga that kidnapped the prince was really just her personal guard in disguise. And the only reason that the guard brought the prince here was because Ludmilla told him to get him out of the way, and the guard took that order very literally and just put him in the tower, thinking that this was as out of the way as he could. Though it turns out Ludmilla really meant just kill the brat, and she's like, well, why would I kill him? He's the prince. So, yeah, end result, because she's so angry at this guy, she ends up throwing him into the cell too, and so ultimately the prince, the guard, and Bartok are all locked up. As such, Ludmilla decides that she's just gonna let them die here as she drops the floor of the dungeon and essentially lets the place fill up so they can all drown. Before she leaves, she takes one last parting from Bartok, as before she threw him in the cage, she grabbed the potion, because like I said, he openly bragged about what the potion was supposed to do. And so, well, that kind of sounds appealing to her. Make her on the outside what she is on the inside, but tenfold. More powerful, much stronger. She's like, okay, I'm for this. I like this. And so after she tells them all to piss off, and starts letting the building fill up with water, she takes a few good swigs of the potion and just downs it all, dropping it, which leads to the final song in the movie, which is also this film's villain song, The Real Ludmilla, as Ludmilla sings about how she no longer has to pretend to be anything, how she's finally achieving her goals, how they'll all see the real Ludmilla as she just extravagantly strolls tumbles down the stairs to a torture chamber, to a dungeon, and of course our supporting singers are the prisoners of said dungeon, as well as all the various rats. I'm just going to adjust this a little. But as they go along, we see Ludmilla starting to transform, and well, it's clear Ludmilla's not paying a lot of attention to what's happening to her, because as she goes along, she goes from a thin blonde lady into a very big, very purple, and very angry dragon, with the climax of the song being her completing her transformation as she sings about how the real Ludmilla will rule and all that. And the thing is, she doesn't realize that she's a dragon until she goes to the throne room, sees all the people there, and they freak the hell out and run away. And while Ludmilla's trying to bask in their glory as they see their new ruler, well, part of the tapestry on the floor rips and she's able to see her reflection. And put simply, she ain't happy about it, which I guess just pisses her off so much that she decides, you know what? Fuck it, if this is what I am, I'm just gonna burn this place to the ground, and she just proceeds to start tearing the city apart. In the meantime, back with our heroes, again, Bartok, the prince, and the guard are still trapped in their cages as the tower is filling up with water. But thankfully, since Zoji was outside the city when all hell broke loose, he came back in and, well, he sees that Bartok's in a bit of a jam, so he gives him his extra bit of help as he manages to break into the tower and pull up Bartok's cage. However, as such, with Bartok free, he realizes that Ludmilla is out there terrorizing the city, and someone needs to calm her down. As such, while Zoji stays behind to go and help the prince and the guard get out of their cell, immediately Bartok flies out into the city and tries to find ways to stop Ludmilla, which is also added to the fact that the whole town's on fire thanks to her fire breath, so he also needs to try and find a way to fix that. And sure enough, there is a tower that's conveniently filling up with water, and so he thinks that if he can get Ludmilla to the tower, he can essentially kill two birds with one stone. As if he can get her on the tower and then get it knocked down, then she'll not only be crushed in the rubble, but all the water that's flooding said tower will put out her fire. And so immediately we get our climax here as we see Bartok using his natural skills as an entertainer, combined with what he learned during Baba Yaga's journey, to just get Ludmilla's attention and just kind of get her to follow along, and just kind of get her to follow him all the way back to the tower. And sure enough, once he gets her on said tower, he manages to get her to exert her weight enough on the thing so that eventually the whole thing just crumbles, and well, down she goes as the whole tower just crumbles to bits, and ultimately Bartok's plan is a success, as Ludmilla is crushed in the resulting rubble, and all the water filling up the tower is spread out across the town and puts out her fire. So, the day is saved. Prince Ivan has been rescued. The big bad evil advisor has been put down, and so the prince, now free from his captivity, does tell the entire city that they should all put their hands together for Bartok the Magnificent, the hero of the day. And Bartok is just all bashful about it. But what helps kind of set the whole thing, well, it does kind of add a little bit of a boost to his ego, as when they look up to the sky and they see Baba Yaga flying around spelling out Bartok the Magnificent in letters. So it's kind of fun. I like that. And so the film ends as Baba Yaga and Pilaf are flying away. But Bartok goes to see her, and he tries acting all nice to her, but she's of course she's like, no, this is a one-time thing. I'm not going to be doing this. And Bartok finally managed to go in and get a hug, with Pilaf even joining in for a group hug. And while Baba Yaga does enjoy it, eventually says, no, we're done here. That's enough. We're just going to go now. As she and Pilaf fly away, saying that they'll see Bartok again one day. And so that's where the film ends, as Bartok tells everyone thanks for watching. So, sort of, I think. I don't know. But, yeah, that's the end of the movie. And my thoughts on it? It's enjoyable. I'll say that. But, is it a great movie? Honestly, I would not go that far. I'm not going to say it's a bad movie. No. This is not a bad movie, because, honestly, there's a lot of heart, clearly, in this movie. There's a lot of creativity in it. There's hold on one second. Sorry about that. As you can probably tell, my voice is not doing well, so it's kind of so I kind of need to take a break there. But yeah, ultimately, this film is honestly a very creative and honestly entertaining movie. I think for me, what does hold it back and keeps it from being a great movie is, well, it's very clearly a direct-to-video movie. It was made to be direct-to-video, and what we're presented here is nothing more than that. And I'm not saying all that to demean the movie. No, 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 no. I'm not saying any of that to demean the movie. When this film was made, it was made with those exact specifications in mind. And honestly, as a direct-to-video movie goes, I think it's a lot better than what you would expect. The animation is definitely a far cry above what you would expect of a direct-to-video film. And while it still does have a lot of the same watermarks that you would see of a film in that genre, it again still has a lot more effort and time put into it than you think that a film like that would need. With that said, it is also not on the standards of a theatrical film, and I can understand why Don Bluth still did not want this movie to go to theaters, even when it was suggested that it could go to theaters. Because, well, while the animation is definitely a lot better than what you would expect from a direct-to-video film, it's also not as good as what you would expect in a theatrical film. Like, compare the animation from this movie with that of Anastasia, and I'm just gonna say right now, Anastasia's gonna win, hands down. But that does not mean the animation is bad either. No, but again, as signs that this is a direct-to-video movie, well, the pacing is a little rushed at points. It feels like this film is just trying to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible, and as a result, some plot points don't feel like they have as much time dedicated to them as they should. Like with Bartok's journey to go see Baba Yaga, or him going off to do all of her tasks. It feels like more time should have been spent with all of those in order to properly build them up, but instead it just kind of feels a little rushed. Same goes for when Bartok has his little heart-to-heart with Baba Yaga, or when he goes to go and see Ludmilla, and she immediately turns into a dragon. Again, it feels like that we should have had more time with all this stuff, but instead it feels a bit rushed, and as a result, it does kind of make the story not feel as grand as it really could, which I don't like saying, but it's kind of sadly true. It does feel like this film could have been a lot better than what we were presented. But with, again, all that said, what we are presented is not bad. I would dare say it's enjoyable. It's fun. It's got a lot of creativity and heart. And the first thing we can say with that is, well, the music. While there are only 5 songs in this movie, the songs themselves are enjoyable. Like, again, the first song that sings about the chorus and talking about Baba Yaga is a good way of setting the mood for everything. Bartok singing about himself, and the Bartok the Magnificent song, I think, is a very entertaining and catchy song that does help establish Bartok's character as a shyster and an entertainer, and also kind of sets him up for kind of sort of fall as essentially his mouth writes checks that Bartok himself can't cash, and then likewise again, sorry about this. Likewise, a possible hero is actually a nice song that does essentially act as the call to adventure that Bartok needs in order to get him on the right path. Again, the Someone's in My House song, while narratively I find to be unnecessary, like with Bartok the Magnificent, does actually do a good job at introducing Baba Yaga and setting up her character. And the real Ludmilla, it's it's an alright villain song. I think I've heard better, but overall I think it's alright, as it definitely is moody and gets her personality and arrogance down pat as we see her talking about how majestic she'll be as she's turning into a giant dragon. So I kind of like that. It's nice. So in that regard, the music in this film is definitely entertaining. And likewise, while the animation I don't think is up to par with a theatrical animated film, it's not bad either. It's actually pretty nice. The environments are definitely all unique and varied and interesting to look at. And on top of that, the characters are actually pretty good too. Bartok as a main character, I admit, I was a little iffy on, as because he's supposed to be a shyster and an entertainer, and definitely kind of thinks more with his wallet than with his actual heart. It did seem like it would have been very easy to make him kind of a selfish jerk who was only really doing this because he had to save face. But ultimately, I think they do give him enough of a character so that you do still like him. Like, they still establish this guy is kind of a shyster who basically just talks a big game, but ultimately has no real experience in the field of, well, heroing, as we'll call it. But he does, and as a result, because of that, it does allow him to honestly get to some humorous setups as we see him kind of getting his comeuppance as he's now put in these real situations and is suffering for it. But by that same token, you can definitely tell that he isn't a bad person either. He is trying to put his best foot forward and help people, and while he will tell a few tall tales in order to rile a crowd up, he never does anything to hurt anybody. He's just there to put on a good show, get a few dollars, and then move on with his life. And yeah, while he will skim a few pennies off for himself, at the end of the day, he does value his cohorts and friends, and does want to do kind of right by them. So again, I dig that. I like that. It's nice. And throughout the movie, they do still make Bartok an entertaining character. And yeah, while his shyster attitude never really goes away, as even after he gets the information on where the prince is, he still embellishes the story of Baba Yaga. It's still at the same time, it's still enough. He doesn't really ever get to the point where he's annoying. Maybe a couple times here and there where I just kind of I get annoyed with how he kind of blathers on, especially when he goes back to the city and tells Ludmilla, oh, the prince is in the tower, and it takes him fucking forever to get to the point. But by that same token, but honestly, again, those moments aren't too far, or those moments are kind of dotted out throughout the movie, and they don't feel very intrusive. And I'll be honest, I like the arc that they give him in the movie, as well throughout the film he talks a big game about being a hero. He now is in a situation where he has to be a hero, and it is cool seeing him put his best foot forward and try to live up to the ideal as best as he can, even if he himself doesn't think he can match it. Which again, I like. I think that's some good stuff. And then likewise, that brings us to give me one second. Sorry again. Sorry, blanked on his name. It brings us to Joji. I will openly admit, narratively, I feel like Joji is a bit of an unnecessary character. The only real things he does in the movie are act as Bartok's partner in the beginning of the movie to help set up how much of a hero he is by Bartok slaying him in battle, and likewise he does help out in the climax when he helps Bartok and Co get free from their cells. But by virtue of Baba Yaga setting the limitations for Bartok's challenges to be that he can't have Joji's help, he doesn't really bring anything plot-wise to the movie. With that said, he's a good comedic relief. He's definitely, I think, he definitely knows how to kind of offset Bartok's arrogance and attitude. He definitely is a good counter to him, and it works. It works well. He does not, it's clear that he is supportive of Bartok when it comes to him finding his better self, but he's also one person who's not willing to put up with any of Bartok's shit and will throw things back in its place. Case in point, when Bartok is dividing up the spoils from the performance at the beginning of the movie, he's of course giving himself more gold than he's giving Joji. And so likewise, when Joji calls him out and he's like, "What? No, look, the scales are fine," which he says while he's resting on the scales, which puts more weight on Joji's side. And so he says, "See, it's all equal, it's all nice." And so Joji says, "Okay, yeah, sure, it's all equal, then I'll just take this side." He takes Bartok's side of the money, leaving Bartok with very little. Again, he's willing to give him crap. With that being said, he also is the one to kind of help push Bartok in the right direction. While Joji was not really okay with going on this dangerous mission, what helps him keep going with this is, one, Bartok's the one that volunteered, so Bartok's the one that's going to be doing all the danger. But then likewise, when Bartok falters, Joji's the one to kind of give him a good kick in the pants and kind of helps him keep going, while still delivering some genuinely good jabs at his expense. Pretty much just reminding him, you wanted this, now you gotta deal with it. And so, I like that. He's a good counter for him and acts as a really good comic relief as a result. Especially when I think one of my favorite scenes is when Bartok goes to see Baba Yaga. When Joji tries to follow, the Tim Curry skull closed itself off, tells him he can't go. It's like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll be with you in spirit," as he just goes over to a comfy spot, puts his feet up, and then starts reading a book. It's actually really fun. And Kelsey Grammer's performance with him just really hammers in just how much of a theatrical ham that Joji is. Hell, going to the scene where he's rescuing the prince and the guard, as he's carrying them out of the tower, he starts quoting theatrical lines in the most dramatic way possible. And I'm just looking at this like, oh my lord, you really need to do this now? While the guard's going, wow, you're really good. And like, dude, come on, time and place, come on. It really works. It honestly works, and I think he acts as a good counter to Bartok keeping him on the straight and narrow while also delivering just as much as he can take. So again, honestly, a very good character. And then likewise, the rest of the cast I think is pretty nice. Baba Yaga I think is a nice character that. Honestly, I could kind of see that she wasn't the bad guy, especially since when you look on the DVD, she's not there on the case, and that don't look like Baba Yaga. At the very least, like I said, while I think her song was kind of unnecessary, it does a great job at kind of introducing her as a character and helping set up just what kind of a person she is and how she operates and so forth. And yeah, she's and likewise, she's eccentric, but ultimately not unfriendly. She's just not a social person. And as a result, while she knows that there are rumors out there that paint her as this monster, she doesn't do anything about it because she's just content to live by herself and live a happy life. And as a result, combine that with all of her eccentricities, it makes her for an entertaining character. And again, fucking Pilaf. Pilaf's a fucking adorable. She deserved more scenes, damn it. I loved her. I can't really say anything for Oblay because Oblay was just meant to be a big oaf, so not really going to count him as a character, as ultimately his whole purpose is just as an obstacle that Bartok have to overcome. But if I have to give some more crap to the movie, sadly, Ludmilla's not really that good a villain. Like, I'm just going to say this right now. It's fucking obvious she's the villain. Let's pretend that she's not on the cover of the DVD shaking her fist at Bartok. She's so obviously the bad guy. The way she scoffs when Prince Ivan stops to watch Bartok. The way she tells him he has to keep up a strong front for his people. And the way she just does such a crappy, over-the-top performance when Sir Ivan is kidnapped. It's so obvious this bitch is the bad guy. Come on, why are you still pretending it's Baba Yaga? This lady is clearly in the wrong. Why are we dancing around this? Now, admittedly, maybe that's part of the joke, that she's so obviously the bad guy, and yet no one can see it. But honestly, when it comes down to it, she also doesn't have much of a strong character. Literally, the only thing about her is that she's treacherous and that she wants her power and that she's vain. Likewise, and as a result, nothing really about her stands out character-wise. She's just kind of a generic villain. She's not very quotable. There's nothing really entertaining about her scenes because she doesn't feel like that she's one of those villains that just kind of enjoys the minutia of being evil. She's just power hungry, kind of a bitch, and will be smug about it at times. So, admittedly, she's kind of a flaw in the movie. She is kind of the only big flaw in the movie. She's not she really doesn't feel like a strong bad guy. Baba Yaga is a much stronger character, and she's not even the villain. So, yeah, I'm gonna call that a flaw. But when it comes down to the movie, and I'm sorry, I can't really think of a lot else to say, the film itself is, like I said, all right. Again, it does suffer some flaws from being a straight-to-video release. Like I said, the animation is is good. It's definitely good and above animation you would expect from a straight-to-video release, but it's also not on par with a lot of the animation you would see in a theatrical release. So there is some problems. The story does feel rushed, and as a result, certain emotional beats do kind of really don't feel like they should have had more time to them and so forth. And likewise, while I do like Bartok, I do kind of find some of his stuff annoying at times. But with all that said, it's still a very creative movie while the story does feel rushed at times, it's still a creative idea, and I do like the journey that we're presented with. While Bartok can be annoying at times, I do like the journey they put him on, and I do think it's a very interesting journey as we see this kind of selfish showman have to try and actually find the hero within him and do his best to help others, despite his lacking abilities. And then likewise, I think the other characters are really nice, as they're all a good cast of characters. I love the environments we're presented with. I do like the music. I do love how everything comes together in the end. On the whole, I do think that Bartok the Magnificent is an enjoyable flick. It's filled with heart, a lot of creativity, good animation, good music, honestly good characters. I think its really big problem is that the villain just feels like a lackluster villain, and the plot really does feel a bit rushed at points, as it really does, as it feels like it's trying to get too far, too quick. It tries to go too quickly from point A to point B, and it does kind of make the film feel lesser. Does not make it bad though. Honestly, I do still recommend this movie. While I would say that maybe there are that like well, it isn't up to the same standards that I would have a theatrical film. This is still an enjoyable watch, and ultimately, I would still give it a thumbs up. If you haven't checked this film out yet, highly recommend it. It's very much worth your time, and if you haven't, and like I said, if you haven't seen it yet, just give it a watch. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. So, yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. I thank you for watching. Kiki, if you made it this far, I hope you enjoyed the video. And as for the next video, I'm not going to be doing a vlog next week. Next week, I'm going to be attending a con with my friend Haley and her boyfriend, so I'm not going to be available. So I'm just going to skip the vlog next week. But when I do return, we are going to finally be putting an end to Friday Night Film Strips, as we are going to be taking a look at a film that I personally want to look at, and one that I kind of suggested to myself, as well, as we see for ourselves if, well, cats don't dance.